Welcome to Stock Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. One of the best kept secrets, and I'm trying to not have it be a best kept secret, is the library. And we're so happy to have Eleanore Chadderdon today from the St. Louis Public Library. And we're going to be talking about all the resources you can find there for trademarks, patents, and other intellectual property. Thanks so much for coming, Eleanore.
Thanks for having me, Mary. I'm really happy to be here.
So, what are some of the most popular things that people need to grab hold of at the library?
We're here to talk about intellectual property, and that's so important for entrepreneurs because sometimes that is the first property that a business has. Whether it's a new invention, which would be covered by a patent, or a name, a brand, a slogan, a logo, which would be covered by trademark. Those are things that a business needs to know what they have, how to protect it, and where to go to get the sources of help and support.
So, one of the first things they need is a brand, right? So, what
Right.
are some resources to protect your brand?
So any brand is a trademark. So whether that's a name or a logo or a slogan, if I'm going out to the store or I'm going on the internet and I see your logo or I hear your name, it helps me as the customer associate that with what you're selling. And so that's valuable for a business in building that market share. It's also useful for me as the customer because I know what I'm getting. And so protecting a trademark, you can register it with the federal government through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. In the United States, trademark rights are based in use. So even if you don't have it registered, you still have what are called common law rights. But registering gives it that extra level of protection. So if someone comes along and tries to infringe on your brand, intentionally or unintentionally, it's that extra level of protection that'll help preserve your brand.
Okay. And how complicated is it to register a trademark?
Well, it's fairly simple. You tell the government who's the owner of the trademark, what the mark is, what you're using it for, and then you send them some money. So that's fairly simple, but the details get a little complicated. So applying to register a mark is a legal proceeding. And so you want to make sure not only that all your I's are dotted and your T's crossed, but also that they're following the right format in all of the other ways. This is true for both trademarks and patents, that you want to do it right. And the better you do it in your initial application, the less little mess you have to clean up.
And what can people find at the library to help them do all this?
Sources of information and directions to guidance. I like to say that librarians are like a guide through the jungle of information, or also that I help people access information that will make their lives more wonderful. And with intellectual property, it's it's maybe even a little bit more important than like finding the perfect recipe for your next family dinner, because it has all those legal implications and it is your property rights and you want to make sure you do it right.
So it's
So
finding the forms, filling them out, knowing how many of them and what different steps you have to take. And librarians can help guide you through that whole thing, right?
absolutely. Now, I am a librarian, not a lawyer. So I can't give any legal advice, just like librarians can't help you do your taxes, but they can help you find the forms that you need to do your taxes and direct you to sources of information about that. That is sort of what I do as a librarian. So I think the library is a great starting point. And then the first thing I do is direct people to the USPTO's website, uspto.gov. That's where all the information is about patents and trademarks, and there's a lot of it. So if anyone's watching this wants to pause and go to uspto.gov and check it out and then come back, I'm sure that there are people who didn't come back because they just got lost in all of this information. And it's fascinating. They have so much great information. They're having a wonderful time at that website. And I bet there are people who can go to that website, they'll find exactly what they're looking for, and they don't need to come back to learn anything more. And then there's probably a lot of people who go and say, wow, there is so much here. Where do I even start? And so that's where I come in. And I can say, go here for this part of the information, here for this information. Here's where you find the tools and you check on your application. Here's how you file your application, and here's how you check on what's going on with it once you have filed.
And one of the most important things is anytime a person is new to something, they
Mhm.
have a lot of questions, but they may not be the right questions. And a librarian can help you figure out what the right questions to ask are.
Absolutely. And often the first thing I do with people is help them figure out what kind of intellectual property do they have. Because in the United States, there's four different kinds of intellectual property. There's new useful inventions, which are protected by a patent. There's brands, which are protected by a trademark. But there's also creative expression, things like songs and books, even advertisements that are covered by copyright. And then there's trade secrets, which is those that information that has value because no one else knows it. Think about the formula for Coca-Cola, for instance. So helping people understand what kind of intellectual property they even have before we start talking about what steps they would take to protect it. So one of my favorite things, and this happens fairly frequently, is someone will come in and say, I need to get a patent to protect my brand. Well, you know already that that's a trademark that they're looking for, but they don't know that. And that's a great place to start because that means that can be hugely helpful to them in helping them understand that.
Right. So any intellectual property. Now, some things cannot be trademarked or patented, stuff like recipes or I think what
Laws of
patterns for
nature.
clothing,
Mm-hmm,
designs for
mm-hmm,
clothing, stuff like that. You can copyright the drawing of a
sure.
design, but you
Mm-hmm,
can't copyright the design itself. And this is something that librarians know.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Clothing is something people come in and ask about, and that is often the best strategy there is just first to market, best marketing practices, and build that brand.
Well, this is excellent information. Any other particular tips you have for people on patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets?
Mhm. The library is always the best place to start. The USPTO will recommend that people hire an attorney, and I think that's great advice. It's a legal proceeding. You want someone who's an expert. I like to make the analogy to car repairs. You can come into the library and say, how do I repair my car? And I'm happy to help you find sources of information in printed books and the electronic resources, but I'm not going to repair your car for you. But and you might decide that it's too complicated for you, but the more you know, the better you'll be able to communicate with the person you hire to do the thing. So I mean, I changed the oil in my car once and then I decided I would rather pay someone to do this. But if you decide to do that, to go that way, to find an attorney, I can direct you towards the sources of free legal advice. You can find that information on the USPTO's website, maybe, but maybe it's faster to ask me because, as we know, entrepreneurs have so much going on that finding someone who can cut right to it so they don't have to spend a bunch of time searching for something that I can easily show you in 5 seconds is a
Sure.
great thing. But if you do decide to
There
hire,
are a few organizations of lawyers that do pro bono work, right? For like the arts, there's an
there
organization.
is the volunteer lawyers and accountants for the arts, but the USPTO has programs of its own. They have a patent pro bono program, which is lawyers doing pro bono work. They also have a law school clinic certification program, which is law school students who are supervised by experienced practitioners, providing both patent and trademark help. And either way, whether you qualify for those free sources or whether you hire someone, the more you know about how the process works, the better you'll be able to communicate about it. So I think learning is always great.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanore Chadderdon from the St. Louis Public Library. This has been really important information. We will put some links in the comments so that people can get to the Patent and Trademark Office as well as the library. For,
Wonderful.
for the information you need, always talk to your librarian first. And I'm Mary Scott with Business Ref. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me. It's at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.